It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Kay Huff and Wayne Oplinger. Kay is passionate about coaching dental practices, and Wayne is passionate about helping older dentists transition their practice correctly and helping younger dentists buy their first practice. Let me read your bio. I'll start with Kay, because ladies first. Kay Huff, RDA, began her career in dentistry as an assistant to an assistant in 1981. With great determination, Kay gained knowledge and experience as she worked her way to the front office team. Kay defined herself as being a true team player in positions of treatment coordinator and office manager, always doing whatever it took each and every day to make a difference in her practice. It was over 30 years ago that Kay began helping teams as a dental practice coach, and she proudly has been the driving force for hundreds of practices to reach and exceed their professional goals. Kay is passionate about her work and carries a strong background in dental business systems, team motivation, leadership, and practice profitability. She is a dynamic dental speaker who fills her programs with plenty of laughs and tangible practice management tools that they can take directly back to their practice and apply immediately. She is a certified consultant in employment law compliance with Ben Erickson and Associates, as well as a board member of the Academy of Dental Management Consultants, the Speaking Consulting Network, and a member of the American Association of Dental Office Managers. Additionally, Kay received first place in the Spotlight on Speaking Competition at the 2016 Speaking Consulting Network Conference in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Congratulations on that, Kay.
Thank you.
That is amazing. And Wayne Oplinger is a transition analyst at Benco Dental. He started with Benco Dental as a local territory rep 6 years ago in 2011, covering Westchester County, New York, Southern Connecticut, Northern New Jersey. After 3 years, he successfully built his territory sales in excess of $3 million. After 4 years, Benco Dental asked Wayne to take on a new position, Practice Transitions Analyst. In this capacity, Wayne would be the single point of contact for Benco customers and transition partners by developing customized transition solutions for Benco customers. Prior to joining Benco Dental, Wayne was a small business owner for over 15 years. Wayne can relate well to dentist owners because his small business, although not in dental, was very similar in production figures, overhead, and profits. In addition to becoming a transitions resource for dentists throughout the country, Wayne is a well-sought-out speaker at major dental meetings, local study clubs, as well as dental schools. Thank you so much for getting up on a Saturday morning and coming on the show today. I can't wait to talk to you guys. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. Great. We're excited.
So, Kay,
glad to be here.
Wayne, where are you guys at right now? Texas and Pennsylvania?
Yes,
that's correct.
So where are you at in Texas, Kay?
I'm in Houston.
Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas.
And where are you in Pennsylvania?
Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, home of Benco.
Wilkes-Barre. Okay, very good. I love that place. I forgot when Chuck had me. I was speaking somewhere in Pennsylvania. What's that really famous resort that everybody goes to, where there's deer everywhere?
Oh, is it Mount Airy Casino, or is it Mohegan? No.
No, some place crazy, but I have the most insane story about that place. It's a really common dental meeting place. It's way out in the woods. I mean, it's out in the middle of nowhere. But anyway, so the true story. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. Just unbelievable. So I wake up in the morning and I open up the sliding glass doors and there's snow and this and I just wanted to walk out there and just check it out. I didn't see the big, huge red sticker on the window that says door locks from behind. And I open it up and I walk out. I guess it's a security thing. And because it's around a lake and behind snow, the door closes and I'm standing out there in my underwear for a couple seconds, taking a deep breath, looking at it all. And then I go back and I can't get in. And it's like 5:15 in the morning, and I'm clear in the back by the resort, by some lake. I swear to God, it was a mile to the front door. And when I came through, everybody instantly knew what had happened because the lady says it happens all the time. And I said, well, if it happens all the time, don't have the damn door locked from behind you. I mean, it was just, good God. Coming from Phoenix where it's 118 degrees today, I just don't do good standing in my underwear in the snow. But other than that, so what do you guys want to talk about first? You want to talk about who wants to go first, and what do you want to talk about? You want to talk about
ladies first.
Sure,
Ladies first,
absolutely.
Howard.
So, my role at Transitions is I'm the director of coaching for Transitions, and we have 12 coaches that work underneath me, and we have, 6 business and 6 clinical. And so part of my role that I do with Benco is that Chuck is really passionate about, not just selling equipment and supplies, but really helping a doctor's office succeed all the way around. So he's always been, practice development has always been a part of Benco. Even, 15 years ago, we used to be called the Insight Division, and and then we've merged, and now we actually, because we've grown so much, we have coaches all over the U.S. And so my role is that I actually go in and I do the practice assessment. So if you've ever had an assessment on your practice, what I do is I get the doctors to fill out a bunch of information, and then I start reviewing it, and it immediately starts telling me the story about, really and truly where's the doctor standing right now and what he wants to accomplish. And a lot of things I look at are like their vision. Do they have a vision? Because if I go in and I start pulling out data, I really want to know, like, from where do you want to go this year and where are you headed? And also looking at their overhead numbers. And, it seems like lately I've had a couple of practices that don't even know what a profit and loss statement looks like. So it kind of surprises me. And so what I do is I actually pull numbers, set up some guidelines for them, and then we actually review. So there's 44 systems that kind of manage a dental practice. And so what I do is when I'm in the practice is I review those 44 systems. And it doesn't really matter what software they're on. I pretty much know all the softwares. And then I do interviews with team members. And, it's funny, you can ask a doctor a question like, does your team know your vision? And you ask the team members a question and they don't know their vision. So it's really kind of starts telling me a lot about the practice. Then based on that, once I gather all the historical data, I sit down the next day and I have usually it's 4, but it's been 4 to 6 hours, just review with the doctor about where they are and what they can do to get to where they want to go. And just break it down for them. And then they decide to go on the coaching program, and then we sign it off to the coaches. So it's really, it's very exciting.
So where can my homies get a list of these 44 systems?
Oh, I'll be happy to give you a list of the 44 systems, because we just, when we go over the systems, I actually review all the systems in the practice. And so, and we look at the KPIs. I know that there are several KPIs that I can list 12 that I think are important. But really, the one thing that I see about a practice is that when we go into a practice, having the team really understand what's going on with the practice is really important. So when I do the interviews, it kind of tells me, like, where's your practice headed? And normally a doctor, like an example would be if I go into a practice and a doctor writes in his information that he's spending $60,000 on marketing. So when you go into the practice, when you're interviewing the team members, one of the questions I would ask is, so tell me about the marketing. Do you know what % really even know what they're doing?
Would that be none?
Well, it's probably more about 5%. There are a few that do know. Some team members may know because maybe they'll tell 1 or 2. But what happens is that when I go in and I start pulling the data, it doesn't really matter. They could be actually gaining, 30 to 60 new patients in the front door. But what they're not watching is they're not watching their attrition. Before they go into marketing, we believe that there's 6 steps that they should follow. Number 1 is they should set up their vision for themselves. They need to have a vision for their team. They need to have their mission. Then they need to put their goals in place. They strategize on how they're going to do it. Then they implement their systems. And then they should do their marketing, and then they can be excited about their growth and do their celebrating. And what I find is that a lot of people will do their marketing before all the other systems are in place. And then what happens is that you are gaining, you're getting new patients, but because your systems aren't in place to keep the patients in your practice, you're also losing them out your back door. It's not unusual to go in and ask a doctor, say, well, okay, I'm gaining 60 new patients a month. And the next question would be, well, how many hygiene hours are you adding on? And he'll tell me none. So is he really gaining 60 new patients?
Yeah, it's just an hourglass. This whole dental consulting industry, the only parallel I can find in it was Microsoft and Apple. Microsoft, Bill Gates, made such horrible software, riddled with bugs. All he wanted was money, 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 money. And so an entire industry popped up of people trying to teach you how to use this shitty software, PowerPoint, Word, Excel. There were DVDs or all these classes. Then here's over here with Steve Jobs with Apple says we're going to make this so intuitive that when we come out with a product, a 60-year-old grandmother with her 6-year-old granddaughter can figure it out without anybody helping them. And that's what dentistry is. I mean, the practice management software. So in a nutshell, here they're just blind. I mean, so if I make this bottled water for 80 cents and I sell it to Kroger for $1, I know I make 20 cents on each bottle of water. There's not one dentist in America who knows the cost of doing 2 fillings in operatory 4 for an hour. And then he's signed up for 12 different insurance plans. He's getting anywhere from 100 to 190 for the filling. And so it's just all voodoo because there's no practice management software hooked up to an accounting package. And then when it comes to marketing, it's even crazier. You do the $60,000 of marketing, and we know that 10 people have to land on the website before 1 converts to a call. We know that 3 people have to call before 1 converts to coming in. We know 3 people have to come in with a cavity before the treatment plan coordinator can convert 1 to getting it done. And then the hygiene. So if you want 1 filling, you need 3 patients to present treatment to. To get that, you need 9 people to call. To get that, you need 90 people to land on your website. And then on the hygiene, you'll have 8 people scheduled on an 8-hour day for a recall. The hygienist will reappoint 6. So you just lost 25% attrition on that one day. Then when the 6 get around to coming in, 1 might call and say, I can't come in today, let me call you tomorrow. No one will call her ever again. So the funnel to get in and the funnel blowing out all the attrition means that by the time the average dentist has 5,000 charts, 4,000 of them haven't been in one time in 24 months. And then the dentist, and you say, well, what are you going to do? And he says, well, I'm going to go to a bonding course. I want to check out the 8th generation bonding agent because I think if I could just get a little better glue, and even that's insane. I mean, the composites all shrink and fail in 6.5 years on the back teeth. And the amalgams all corrode and seal and last 38 years. And if you look that doc in the eye and say, Doc, what lasts longer? The metal silver filling or that plastic thing you put in the tooth? They'll say, well, actually, the plastic one, because it takes 8 years of dental school to be this insane. I mean, so it's just crazy. So what practice management software do you think is, of all the horrible software out there, which one do you think is the least horrible? If some 25-year-old kid is working at Aspen and she's thinking, I'm going to break out and do a de novo, start up my own, what software would you tell her to go with?
I like PracticeWorks and I like SoftDent. I like PracticeWorks because it's easy to work on and it's easy to pull reports in. And SoftDent's better for a larger practice. And this is it. It's, all the software is capable. It's a matter of training the team to be able to use it. Because when you talk about all of those things that you're talking about, that's 100% true. But when I go in to look at an office and I'll find out, I'll start pulling out their software and their data. Normally, their active patient count, I've seen an active patient count for one dentist be up, in 6,000s, which we know is impossible. But because they really don't track it correctly, I think that as a coach, the one thing that I have to tell dentists is that they really just need to back up and start training their team members because they hire team members, they put them in a place. And, I'm a big Linda Miles fan and I've done a lot of her courses and she's like my mentor. But even when I ask her a question, she says, Kay, she goes, when we ask her, like, what's the value of a team member, depending on how well that team member's trained, you could get a lot more value out of them. So it's what you hire. If you hire 2 mediocre people, you're going to get a mediocre job. So I am a big believer in training the team to use the software. So when I go in and start pulling reports, they have no idea. Like I will pull reports and just based on their recall, what seems to happen is that they seem to work their recall, but all of a sudden they don't review it in their team meetings. And so what I try to teach them is that every single team meeting once a month, you should actually go in there and say, okay, we have 25 openings in our hygiene department this month. And according to the reports, we have 100 people that are due this month without appointments. So as a doctor, what would that tell you?
Well, what it would tell me is the hygienist wants $40 an hour, and she wants $1 raise every time the earth goes around the sun because raises are based on astrology, not profit and loss. and so she wants $40 an hour, and this doc signed up for a PPO that's paying him $45 for a cleaning. So when you say, if you looked at it analytically, you'd probably want to burn the hygiene department down. But again, the hygienist, she'll come to you and she'll say, well, I want to raise. And I'll say, why? And she goes, because the earth went around the sun, you idiot. And I'll say, well, when I got out of school 30 years ago, Delta gave me $1,000 for a crown and $1,000 for a root canal. Now, 30 years later, they give me $600 for a crown, $600 for a root canal, and you still think you're a legacy registered nurse getting a raise every year. And when dentists tell me, I'll ask, I just say, you want a raise? You just did a cleaning, exam, and bite wings. Did I make $1 or lose 10? And she has no idea. And she can do practice works and soft ed for 1,000 years and still not know the answer.
Well, but I definitely think that if you take the time to train your team, and this is it, I think that when they're a high performing team and they come to a team meeting, you as a doctor, you should just be sitting there and we should be presenting to you our findings. So if I'm accountable for your hygiene department, I should be presenting to you, what's the perio utilization right now, and I should be the downtime, the downtime, if it's any more than 8%, we should be worried. Because any more than 8%, you're definitely losing money. We're going to have fallout, but 8%.
You said if it's 8%, they're losing money. I can go into any dental office and within 4 hours tell you, if they have one hygienist, how many hygienists they'd have to declare bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you're going down with the Titanic, and it's like, well, do you want to put some boots on? How about a helmet?
But the thing is that you have to at least know, if we train the team members, so we have to look in the mirror and go, how well are we training our team members? Because now we have software that will hook up and pull numbers for us. But if we don't really train the team members where those numbers come from, they have no idea really how to fix it. So I think we have to step back and we have to listen and train. So we have to say, if I'm a hygienist, there should be 3 types of dental appointments in my schedule every day. And if there's not, there's an issue there. And if my downtime is more than 8%, I definitely need to figure out what am I doing. And so I really think that when you do your team meetings in a practice, you should have them they're the voice of their department and they need to speak about it and they need to say, this is where I'm at. And the next word to the doctor's mouth should be, tell me what the solution is, because if they need to be a part of the solution. When you make the team members a part of the solution, and I call it empower, when you empower them to help you grow, you'll do phenomenal. Sometimes what happens is that they really just they stay with the doctor. They're not really happy. They've been there for 20 years. They collect a paycheck, and we forget about the excitement about really and truly being clear about what we expect from them. Like, I expect any of my team members to bring me the stats that I need. And also, when I'm not hitting those marks, give me solutions. And we do it together. And it can be as simple as looking at what insurance companies we're on and figuring out, well, can we get off of them? I mean, if your patient count is over 3,000 and you're on all these insurance plans, absolutely, it's time to start looking at that and kind of figuring out where can we start changing these ways and getting off. I'll also say this. I love the computer systems, but sometimes when I'm in there pulling reports, what happens nowadays is that they will allow team members to enter in fee schedules, and then they will allow them to bill out their full fee. But so then when we look at the adjustments, we really don't see what's going on. One of the things that I really think is important for team members to do is when they utilize their software is to understand insurance utilization report, because what that's going to do, and I mean, just recently I've been in an office and they literally writing off $1 million. $1 million of production was being totally just written off, and it's kind of buried now in our computer system. So we'll see the adjustments, but because we bill out the full fee and we use the fee schedule attached to the insurance, the adjustments don't seem that high. So unless they literally go in and pull those certain reports, they don't really see the full what they're fully doing. And so sometimes they're really working hard, they're just not getting paid for it.
So you said there should be 3 types of cleanings in the hygiene department. What are your 3 types? So
it's going to be continuing care, which is the normal continuing care appointment. and we call it PM, periodontal maintenance, which is when someone has had, the
PM is number 2. Is the second one?
PM.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's periodontal maintenance. And then the third one is, we call it AT, which is active therapy, which is root plan and scaling. And so if a hygienist needs to have all 3 of those, and this is it, when you talk about block scheduling, in order to properly block the schedule so that the doctor has downtime too and able to see his primary appointments, you really want to make sure you put next to the doctor's primary, I call it the hygienist primary. When you put those blocks together, it allows both the doctor and the hygienist to have a smooth day. The whole point of this is that you can't hit the numbers that you need to hit to cover your overhead and to allow your hygiene department to get 3 times what they need to make for their salaries if all you're doing is continuing cares in your appointment all day. It's just not going to work. So there has to be a mixture of both. And I would say this, part of what I do is when we teach the team members, we teach them to put those blocks in place. We teach them those blocks based on historical data. What have they done in the past? And then measure those blocks in. Sometimes when they put the blocks in place, they really don't do the homework, and then they end up with too many blocks. And then when they end up with too many blocks, they don't honor the blocks. Then they start getting moved around. So everything is placed there for a reason. So every team meeting, the hygiene team needs to actually come on and do a review of, where their blocks are and how they're feeling them and what's open. And again, going back and pulling the historical numbers and seeing when they should add on, more blocks to make the block scheduling run smoothly.
And this is Dentistry Uncensored. I didn't start this show to make friends. I'm not the fluffy guy. I'm just brutally honest. There seems to be only 2 industries in America that are completely insane, and that's healthcare and government. I mean, you go into food, beverage, hotels, making cars, trucks, they know all their numbers. The S&P 500 averages a 5% profit margin. But when you go into healthcare and you go into, you walk into any hospital in America, they don't know their cost. It's insane. But look at the entitlement mentality. Dentists are usually conservative Republicans, and they always make fun of government. And then let's look at them. I'll sit there and say, well, are you patient focused or is it all about you? Entitled. Oh, no, I'm totally focused on the patient. Okay, what are your hours? Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5. Well, when do you take a lunch? 12 to 1. So the Federal Reserve says 112 million people can't go during those hours. And you ask the hygienist or the dentist, well, can you start at 7 and 2 days a week and stay till 7 2 days a week and maybe work a half day Saturday once a month? They laugh. Look at the hygienist. You talk about 8% cancellation. She'll have 11 to 12 cancellation, and she'll sit back there on Facebook. And then at 11:10, someone will call for a cleaning. You say, "Oh, I'll put it in over lunch." She goes, "No, that's my lunch." I go, "You're eating in the break room from 11 to 12, but is so entitled that you're going to go to lunch from 12 to 1. You only see that behavior at the Department of Motor Vehicles and a dental office. It's insane. I mean, if they don't have a break-even point number for the day, if they don't have their BAM number, their bare-ass minimum, it's totally crazy how many dental offices do nothing an hour before lunch and then still take a lunch and didn't make their break-even point, but by God, they're all leaving at 5 o'clock. And,
I just want to interject, Howard, on that point. The most requested appointment times are after 5 on a Friday and Saturdays. And so when I share that with a dentist, they go, most of them say, I'm not going to work on a Friday, late. And then the other ones say, Wayne, you know that Saturdays are the most canceled time. So I'm wasting staff dollars and overhead. And I agree 100%. Saturdays until we leave this earth are going to be the most canceled. But you have to have systems in place that when someone cancels, you have to have somebody that canceled a week or two ago that you said, I'm sorry, I can't get you in for 8 weeks, but because you canceled, Dr. Smith said, I don't have to charge you the $75 fee because you have to do me a favor. I'm going to get a cancellation here in the next few weeks on a Saturday because things come up. But you know what? You have to come through for me, Mr. Patient or Mrs. Patient. And when I call you on a Friday at 5 o'clock and say, I need you to come in on Saturday, you're going to come in. And the patient, the places that have a system in place, or they say where they have whitening for life, when they have whitening for life, if you break any appointments, you don't get your whitening for life. So when they could say to the patient, if you break this appointment on Saturday, you're not eligible for the 2 free whitening gels and the work that we were going to guarantee, kind of that voids that. So if you properly have systems in place for Saturday appointments, you will not have the cancellations. I just hate when I hear that they don't want to work Saturday.
Humans always start with what they want to believe, and then they fill in the blanks. I mean, they do it in politics, religion, child rearing. I mean, they always start first with what they want to believe, and then they start looking for things to justify what they want to believe. They hate what subject do they hate the most? Math, because you can't 2 + 2 = 4, even though you might feel that it should be 5, and you might wish it should be 3, and you think in a fair world it'd be 9. It's just
well,
is.
In my position, I get to see a lot of financial reporting from the doctors, the ones that are open Fridays or at least open two extended days during the week and open Saturdays. Those are the ones that are most profitable. Those are the ones where they're growing, and those are the most healthy. And somehow you have to figure out a way to have
all my friends in Phoenix open Saturday. 110% of them. Saturday is the biggest day of the week. I mean,
right.
that's the only day that they always can count on 10 grand. I mean, it's Saturday. And why? Because people will say, well, this city's got too many dentists. It's overpopulated. I shouldn't go here. And it's like, well, that depends on what hour, the 168 hours in a week you are. There is no dentist in this entire city on Sunday. Like Phoenix, Arizona. There's not a dentist on Sunday. I mean, if you literally had a toothache on Sunday, you have to go to the emergency room. 8% of the emergency room visits in the United States of America are odontogenic in origin. But I want to go back to that. They're entitled. They take a lunch even though they had a cancellation 11. They go home at 5 even though they didn't break even. 2 things are okay. When you go into those softwares, do you run a report that shows you which reports have never been run and which reports are ran?
I can tell by the last time they were ran. So when I go in, I can see a lot, and because I've been doing it. So
let's start with Dentrix and Eaglesoft. So how many reports does Dentrix and Eaglesoft have? Would you guess?
They all have the same.
But
they're all the same. I mean, so when I go in, I probably pull about, I would say anywhere from 12 to 15 report will tell me the story that I need.
And that's 12 to 15 reports out of how many possible reports could you pull out of Dentrix?
Oh my gosh, you can pull any. I mean, they can actually customize whatever you want. Any of the softwares can do that. So whatever report, if I really wanted a customized report and really wanted to break it down even more, I think all the softwares, you may have to have, pay special to do that. But when I go in, just looking at the active patient count is usually, or the one thing that I look at is anyone that's considered active that hasn't been in the last 2 years, I will find that that count may be 5,000, but then I'll run a report, I think it's in Eaglesoft, that says active patients that's never been seen. And that report can come up to 200. So it tells me that, and this is it, I want to say this, I really like dentists, but I know that the biggest problem is that they're just kind-hearted. I mean, I really feel that when they graduate dental school, my nephew just graduated, he wants to be the best boss ever. And I know that. And so when I go in and I see all this, it's because the doctor really wants to be a good doctor, and he doesn't really know what to get the teams to do, and then nothing ever gets done. And I think sometimes the team members really just don't know what they don't know. They want to work, and when I show them all these reports, they're like, oh my gosh, how did you get that? Where did that come from? So I think that when you start coaching people on really and truly how to put in really good systems, just like, cancellations and no-shows, we have a system where we say after you've missed 3 appointments, we don't dismiss you as a patient yet, but you just don't get another appointment. At that point, if you've missed 3 appointments in the last 18 months, we put you on what we call our same-day call list. And guess what? We'll call you and we'll ask you, we'll say, please let me know what time would work for you. Do you prefer Mondays or Tuesdays? And if we have something available during that time, we'll call you. But at the same time, if we call you, we put you on that appointment, and then you no-show, I look at the doctor and I say to the doctor, I say, at some point, you have to decide when do you want to release this liability? Because it is a liability, because as soon as that patient comes in and you touch a bird of that tooth, you are liable. And whether they come in now and you've done a crown prep and they've missed 4 appointments, do you think at the end, do you really think that you made any money on that appointment? No, because by the time, I mean, I had one doctor tell me, he goes, Kay, by the time I seated that crown, he had missed so many appointments, I was in the negative. So I do think we have to put in systems that control these things, and we have to teach doctors how to look at reports. I mean, there's new codes out now where you can track these, no-shows and cancellations. I just think we really need to put in really good policies. We need to teach the team how to communicate it, because the front desk person could answer the phone and say, we can't schedule you another appointment because it seems like we've missed several in the past. And then that patient come in, go to sit in the hygiene chair, and she look at the hygiene patient and say, that girl in the front, she's really mean. She wouldn't give me another appointment. There's a lack of communication there in the team, because then the hygienist would say, yeah, I know. I can't believe she wouldn't give you another one. Failing to know the policy that this patient has missed 2 appointments. So I go back to, you have to educate your team. You have to have a great vision. You have to have what I call the target patient, and you have to be a good leader. And I think that when I look at dentists today, and I go in and I sit with them, and I sit those 6 hours with them, I mean, they really pour their heart out. It's their livelihood, and they just don't know what they don't know. And all they tell me at the end is, well, how do I do it? And it's really what I want. I've just never known. And so it makes you feel good.
Well, that's so awesome that the number one complaint of our homies is that they're so kind and they want to be. I mean, I love dentists. I do.
They are. They really are.
And look at you. I can tell you guys are in dentistry. Like, you spend the night in anybody's house. If they're not a dentist, a physician, or a lawyer, they just got a couple fiction books, a People magazine, 50 Shades of Grey. You go to any dentist's house and spend the night. They got 100, if not 1,000, nonfiction books. They're smart as hell. They just don't have any systems. They don't know what they don't know. And then every time they have an ounce of excitement, they go try to make a better filling, a better root canal, a better crown, while their business is not poised for growth. They don't have foundation. What are your main 4 key performance indicators that you want them to focus on?
Well, number one, they have to know their overhead. So, just recently I've gone into a couple of practices and I've asked the doctors for their profit and loss, and they'd never seen one. I mean, can you believe that?
I know.
So, and I said,
every teenage kid in my chair that graduates from the high school up the street, Desert Vista and Mountain Point, I say, do you know how to balance your check register from Chase or Bank of America? They're teaching them algebra. They're teaching them algebra. And they can't even do their online banking on their Chase app.
Yeah. But so I've even asked them, I said, well, call your accountant. And I've had 2 of them recently tell me, my accountant says that he doesn't keep anything like that. So, where do I go from there? So it's like, it's really, as a coach, I have to go, okay, so can I talk to your accountant? But one of the main things that I want to look at when I go into a practice is, what are their overheads? I usually will find that team compensation is usually way out of line. And, it's crazy. I'll be sitting there interviewing the team members and they're complaining they need a raise when the doctor's not even bringing home any money. Somebody's not talking. We've got to get
we need to stop the earth from rotating around the sun, because that's the problem. Every time it goes around the sun, they all get another dollar. We've got to get NASA to stop the earth's movement.
Yeah.
So what do you think labor should be, and what are you seeing it at? What do you think labor should be?
So when we look at team compensation, I would say, it should be anywhere between 25 and 28%. And I mean, that includes everything. And I'll say this, I know Wayne feels the same way. What happens is that, Wayne, and you can speak on this, when a doctor goes to sell his practice, I've seen the team compensation up to 35 to 40%, and I'm not joking. Now, if you were a young doctor and you were coming in to buy that practice and you looked at that overhead, what would happen? Knowing that someone, no, you wouldn't buy it. So I tell all these young doctors when we start immediately, you have to keep your overhead under control, because even doctors in their 50s who are thinking about retiring, if they've given, you're right, team members think they need to have a raise every single year. And I don't believe that. I believe everyone should get paid really well, based on what you make. And then you should put in an incentive program that incentivizes the whole team once all the bills are paid. Once the doctor has refunded their 401k, and once the doctor has put away money for solvency and all of that stuff. It's just the basics. And if they don't have to share the numbers, but just share the percentages. When I go to a team to do a presentation and I look at them and I go, you're at 35%. Our goal is not to come in here and lay anyone off, but our goal is to get you at a healthy number so that if something does happen, you will be able to keep your jobs. And so when Wayne comes on and Wayne sees these numbers, I mean, you want to talk on that, Wayne?
Yeah.
Well,
I could give.
Want to interject one
Okay,
thing.
go ahead.
That's why my corporate dentistry CEO guys are getting out of the buying dental offices and moving towards de novos, because it's so brutal to go into an office with 35% overhead, and the only way you can solve it is you got to fire a bunch of people that have been there 10, 20, 30 years, because I can't go up to you and say, well, Sally, you make $27 an hour, and starting on Monday, you're going to make $17 an hour. That's going to go over like a lead balloon. So,
Right.
so they buy an office, and then they have to fire all these legacy people, replace them with people with market wages, and that, then the patients are upset. And so they bought all this blue sky, and they all fired, and it's crazy. They'd rather just start from scratch.
Right. And the personal example, you're absolutely right, Howard. You don't want to have to fire anyone during any type of transition, because it's not good for patient retention. But I tell the doctors, my personal, in 15 years in business, I give them my personal story where the reason your overhead is so high is one of two reasons. You psychologically thought, as your debt decreases, that you should reward the long-term employees with more money. That shouldn't be the thinking. You should know what the market rates are. You should know what performance they should be paid for. It shouldn't be like you joke about all the time, as the sun rotates around the earth and the earth stops spinning. But my personal example that I give them, Howard, is simple. If you are at a high percentage, in my personal business, I laid off 3 people and we did just as much business. And what I did was I didn't know that I had bad apples, that were bringing down the rest of the staff. So if you have a productive staff that likes what they're doing, you could have a 25 to 28% overhead. But you have to have great, passionate people. And when you lay someone off, you have to share that with the rest of the team. Say, hey, we're reorganizing. I mean, one day when you look at that percentage, or when Kay ever tells me, hey, Wayne, this gentleman's thinking about selling his practice, but his overhead is this high, what are we going to coach him on? He has to do reorganization. 35% is not healthy. But I want to tell dentists, they say, Wayne, 25% is unrealistic. I'm never going to do that. That's what I hear. And I say, you could absolutely do that if you have great staff that are productive, that want to work together and want to be there. You could absolutely have 25% overhead.
By the way, Kay, when I was with Wayne in St. Louis, when I first met him, he said his name was Wayne Oplinger. But after 2 beers, he told me his name was Bruce Wayne. So which one is it?
Hilarious.
Which one? So okay, back to your numbers. The 4 performance indicators.
So number 1 would be your overhead. You have to make sure you keep that. Definitely your production.
What's total overhead you think should be?
I personally say anywhere between 58 and 65. I like the lower number. And we can see that. I've actually seen a little lower. It's just a matter of managing your practice. And I'll say this too. One thing I'll tell you is that when we go into coach teams and we talk about this, and we tell the doctor we don't share the number, we share the percentage. We lay it on the line. And so sometimes team members will bury their feet in the sand and they're like, they're not really wanting to change. But when you put it out there and you show them the opportunity and what can happen, team members, they do want to be empowered. And there are a few that quit and stay and will eventually, you'll be able to pick those out. You'll be able to see who's actually on your board and who's actually helping move you forward.
But before you're 6 business consultants around the country. You say that labor should be 28 and total overhead 58, 65. But when you are in the real field and you walk in the office initially, what are you initially finding, and how many of these? And what's the initial that you see?
I mean, I'm seeing a lot more than that. I'm barely ever seeing 65. I'm usually seeing 70, to 85% overhead. And they're just not, their numbers are just not healthy. And it's all areas. I mean, it's all areas of the practice. But really, when they're in their 50s or in their late 50s and they're really wanting to start selling their practice, we have to get those numbers good so that they looks good to a buyer. We have to make sure that active patient count is correct. I've seen offices where they go in and they purchase a practice and they think they have this many active patients, but they really don't. They may have been in, but they're really not a true patient. So I think, okay, so the number one thing is the overhead. That's number one. Number two is definitely setting goals for your production and collection based on your overhead. And then making sure that you monitor that. And there's a difference between gross and net, making sure that you keep up with what your net is, because your net's what you're going to have to pay your bills with. I definitely think you should always look at your adjustments. I think adjustments are something that we need to monitor. And again, if you are on a computer system where you are, and you can put your fee schedules in, and then you can bill out, there's a button you can push to bill out your full fees, which you want to, because you want your full fees to go out. But it's set up. You also have to make sure that you're looking at your full adjustments and making sure that you're looking at that report also. So, and then I would also say capacity, making sure that you keep, your capacity numbers really healthy. Like if you're running anywhere, okay, a 5%, if a doctor makes $450 an hour and he's a 5% overhead, you're looking at $68,000 a year in lost production due to lost time because of nobody's in your chair. So you definitely want to make sure that you monitor your lost downtime and have systems in place that when someone cancels their appointment or someone at the last minute has an opening, that you have ways to fill it. You have backup, whether you have a purging system or a recare system or, a last minute call system or an ASAP list, whatever you have in place, make sure that you control your downtime. So that would probably be my 4.
And I just want to make a few comments on everything you said so far. So I've noticed that when you hire a receptionist and you think she's all great because she's got 10 years experience at the dentist across the street who, and the reason she left that office because he went bankrupt and killed himself, and you say, my gosh, she's got 10 years experience, I want some more of that. But in my experience, when you hire bookkeepers, they come in, the people that come in from dental offices want 25% more money. If they come from government or healthcare, they want 25% higher wages because those are entitled industries. But if they come in and they're a bookkeeper, a person who's interested in bookkeeping, she gets on Dentrix, EagleSoft, SoftDent, Open Dental, and she intuitively just figures it all out all by herself. But if you hire her from dentistry, it's you got to have training, you got to spoon feed her, you got to keep having all these meetings. So the bookkeeper mentality, when I met the first millionaires I ever met, like Dan Carney, the founder of Pizza Hut, he went to my church, I went to his church, I should say, and the people that started Sonic and all these great companies, they all told me the same thing when I was getting out of school. They said, by the time I had my first 5 employees, 2 of them were bookkeepers. I always knew my numbers. It's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And when you have an opening, same thing with an assistant. I can train a bookkeeper how to make a temporary. I cannot train a dental assistant to have management skills on supplies and lab cost and all the accounting, and I can't train her on that. So I'd rather just start with a bookkeeper than teach her how to make temporaries or use Open Dental or whatever. And then number 2, what I've also noticed is that some people like myself, I got a whole bunch of people on my team that are just workaholics. Everybody in our circle just calls us all workaholics, and we just love our work. We just love it. Other people are trading time for money. They're staring at the clock, and they're just only doing it because they need to make money to go do what they really want to do. And I think if you can just keep a dental office, if just 2 out of every 5, if 40% of your staff is workaholics, they'll carry the whole team. So, do you just love to work for the sake of working? Like my Jan's been with me 30 years. That woman shows up an hour before work every day. I'm like, why aren't you in bed sleeping? She's just ready to go. She's ready to go an hour before it's ready to go. She was just born to work.
Yeah.
So
I will tell you, I am so blessed to love my job. And, even though I go in, if these problems didn't exist, I wouldn't have a job. So I am blessed. I love to go in and, look at a doctor and, sometimes they're so passionate. Like they really, when I sit down with them and I go over all these findings, it's hope. I think it's like they always tell me, I knew it was there, I just didn't know how to find it, or I didn't know what to put in place. And so just sitting there and going over all that with them, just key practice indicators that are so important that they don't talk about, and also really empowering their team to help them manage their practice. I mean, you can't do it all alone. I mean, you have your son, people help you. You could never be this successful on your own.
Did my
Am I
son
correct?
tell you he's helping me?
Your son is amazing.
Did he really say he's helping me? My God.
Yeah. I mean, but those people that you've surrounded yourself with have helped you get to where you are today.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and every person on earth knows it when it's applied to a soccer team or a basketball team or a football team, that you just want Tom Brady to be your quarterback. And then they go into dentistry and they don't take HR seriously. I mean, the assistant will quit, and they'll put an ad on Craigslist. 2 people will show up, and they'll hire one of the 2.
You got it.
Imagine if they did that at the Patriots. We need a quarterback. Three drunk guys show up from University of Pittsburgh, and they hire one. I mean,
that's a great example.
When you go into the NFL, and I got a lot of friends that have been. When the Cardinals moved here from St. Louis to Arizona, their headquarters is like literally 1 mile from my office. So I got a bunch of those patients. They tell me that when it comes to HR, like they'll have a quarterback scout. He knows the total number of all people that have ever played quarterback in college that could even possibly be in the NFL. I mean that's how serious as a heart attack these people are in HR. Then you go into dentistry, and they're got and they just don't take it serious. I mean HR is. I could never have done what I did without my Jan for 30 years, my Lori for 19, my Stacy 19. I still got the first editor of Dental Town magazine, Tom Giacobbe, from the year 2000. Now it's 2017. I don't manage those people at all, and I disagree. I think when people talk about training staff, I think the most important thing in training staff is getting rid of staff turnover. Because if you can keep someone 5, 10, 20, 30 years, they're eventually going to be Beethoven at their position. But if you have a bunch of training and your employees quit every 2 years, and it's a revolving door, which I see in corporate dentistry. I mean, everybody that tells me that corporate dentistry is going to take over half the market, I just beg for them to show me any evidence of this at all. I mean, they some of the biggest chains out there can't keep their dentists for a year. The best ones keep their average dentist for 2 years. Hell, if you can't keep your dentist for 2 years, how are you going to build a brand when you can't even keep the damn dentist? And East West Bank up there, they quit funding. Did you know they pulled out of funding?
Yes.
Yes. And I mean that should have been a front page story on the Wall Street Journal. And they said this is a disaster. Well, of course it's a disaster. You can't keep their dentist. Nobody would take them public. Name me one corporate dental chain that could go down to Wall Street. I mean, Snapchat went public for $27 billion. Name me one dental chain that could go to NASDAQ and go public. They'd look at the debt sheet. I mean, they're growing their business with debt. They get $1 million of debt. They go buy an office, and they say, look, our sales went up $1 million. Yeah, so did your debt. And then they get more money, and they go buy another office for $1 million. They go, look, now we're at $2 million. Yeah, your debt's at $2 million.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just this huge debt machine.
Yeah, it is.
And in fact, if you're listening to this and you're sick of drilling and filling and billing, you know what the hottest, fastest growing business is, and it's all over LinkedIn, is these corporates are paying bank if you can find them a dentist to go into some office where some dentist gave 2 weeks notice and is gone. And I mean, most of these big corporate chains could hire 35 or 50 dentists today. And if you can deliver them one, they'll probably give you $5,000. And by the way, if you're listening to that, the classifieds on Dental Town are free. There's usually about 6,000 ads. The hottest sections are selling a practice, or I want to buy a practice, or I'm looking for a job, or I need to hire someone. And the classifieds is coming out on the next version of the app.
Fantastic. That's what it is.
So I hope you use that.
Well, while we're on that, Howard, I help find associates, and I tell my list of 14 things to do. You are number 3 on there, the Dental Town Classifieds. They should have an ad on there absolutely immediately when they're looking for a dentist. It's great feedback I'm getting from it. So thank you very much for having that on there.
So I want to talk to you a little bit. So we've been talking about dental office practices, but You keep saying these older people that are. I'm going to turn 55 next month. I want you to know that older
I'm
is
50.
60 and over.
Okay.
I agree.
You said these older 50-year-olds. You meant to say older 60-year-olds, right? Can
That's
you edit that out
exactly,
where
yeah.
she said that?
I'm older than you, so yeah.
You're older than me?
I'm older than you.
My God, you look like my baby sister.
Oh, we must be kin. I'm sure we are.
So practice transitions, everything. If you look at the macro, all the old guys, 60 and over, when they got out of school, they were pumping out about 4,000 dentists a year. Now they're pumping out 6,000 dentists a year. So supply and demand would tell you that for every 4 offices that go up for sale, there's 6 buyers. So it's got to be a seller's market. What are you seeing out there?
It's absolutely a seller's market, Howard. And here, the biggest thing that I wanted to get through on this podcast to let people know 2 things. That 2008, that financial collapse, that crisis, what that caused as far as transitions are concerned is in about 5 to 7 years, 2 classes, 2 age groups are going to meet. The baby boomers that were hit financially very hard in 2008, they have to continue working beyond 65, the majority of them. The dentists that were early on in their career, in their young 40s, they didn't have any money invested in 2008. So, but now I'm talking to those dentists, they got to, when they started investing, they got to realize the appreciation. They got to realize the comeback. There are dentists that I'm talking to that did a great job, and they're ready to retire at 55, 57. So they're going to be selling their practice. So are the baby boomers, and these 2 groups are going to collide. And there is going to be, I don't want to say an exact year, but I will say in the next 5 to 9 years, it's not going to be a seller's market because of those 2 factors. So I'm not sure if you're hearing much of that, but that's being in this now for 3 years. That's what I'm seeing based on the numbers and the dentists I'm talking to when they're going to sell, when they're thinking about selling. So if anyone is currently thinking about selling, or is thinking, I feel bad for the dentist when he tells me during the first call, Wayne, I think I'm going to sell my practice, or I think I want to retire in 5 to 7 years. To me, I go, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And he'll say, why? And I'll have to explain because of the whole 2008 thing. I don't feel it. The seller's market is not going to be a seller's market in 5 to 7 years. I don't know. What do you feel about that, Howard?
Well, what do you think was the bigger impact on the dentist's financial, the 2008 meltdown or their last divorce?
Both.
Well, I think they got divorced after the 2008 meltdown, so they got hit twice as hard.
Yeah, that'd have been yeah, crazy. But let's the thing that's tough to talk about while we're talking about is the ridiculous use of the term United States of America. No one uses the EU because no one would compare Germany to Greece or Italy to Sweden. And the United States is really a dozen countries flying under the same flag. I mean, like right now, Houston. I mean, Texas is the #1 booming state in America. You can't compare Texas. And then Texas, it depends what's the price of oil at. That affects Louisiana, Texas. So there's all these regional economies. And when people say America has 2% growth, there was no place with 2% growth. There were places growing at 4% and places at 0%. And, it's just an average. So what are you, if some kid came out of school and said, I'm single, I got $350,000 student, I want to go where the jobs are, I want to go where the best condition. You guys have macroeconomic numbers. Where would you tell them to go and where would you tell them to stay away from?
I'm going to give you a shirt, Howard, because I'm with you. I'm going to make a shirt of give rural a chance. Because I'm on a nationwide mission. Every dental class I speak to, I first heard you say this probably 2 years ago when I wanted to ask you a question at the New York dental meeting. A young dentist came up to you and she said to you, I want to go to Atlanta. I'm going to open, and you're like, no, don't go to Atlanta. Go 2 hours outside. And I was only about a year into this position, and I thought, okay, let me study this a little. And I will tell you now, the practices that I get to see financials on, the practices that I get to see are the most profitable. The doctors who are just having an easier time with overhead and debt are all 2 to 3 hours. So I am preaching to the dental students. Anytime I get to speak to a dental student class, I am telling them, please give rural a chance. And that was all because of you. And I want to thank you for that. But it's the right thing to do. They're needed. There's a dentist I heard about just last month up in Maine. Opened a practice. He's getting over 100 new patients a month. He was working in Boston. Somebody said, go up to Maine. He said, I'll give it a chance. Brand new practice, opened from scratch. And he's seen over 100 new patients a month.
Yeah, and his kids can go out on the back porch and shoot a .22 rifle at Coke cans. Try to do that in downtown Boston.
He, like you said, he can fly into Boston in his private helicopter if he wants, or take a private jet, or he'll be able to drive his new Porsche down in downtown Boston.
And it is a Porsche. I got friends. I mean, I'll just call them out here. Classmates of mine. Chip Castine did that in Bakersfield. Stephanie Van Dyne did that. They went to small rural, did 4 great 10-hour days, and then literally got in their black Porsche. I mean, these are 2 classmates, UMKC, 1980, class 87, and then get in their black Porsche, and then drive into Kansas City and have your condo, eat, party on the plaza Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then Monday morning drive back out there 2 hours away from town and crush it. Crush it. I mean, they just crush it. And then what's even crazier is they won't do that, but then they'll join the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, and go to Afghanistan or North Korea or Iraq. It's like, really? Parsons, Kansas was worse than Iraq? Really?
I love that analogy. Love it. And or they'll do, I mean, they like to say they'll do an underserved area, or they'll go work on a reservation. And I say, that is great, but consider your first 3 years working in a rural area. That's where you're needed.
Well, I'll tell you this: my nephew just graduated from dental school at Houston. Him and his wife both just graduated, and the debt that they owe to the school, I mean, so just to pay that back, they need to be productive.
How much debt total do those 2 have?
They almost have $1 million.
$1 million. But the good news on that? The good news in that is 20 countries do the love marriage thing, where young kids in heat go find their mate, and they have a 50% failure rate. The arranged marriage thing, like in India, has a 9% failure rate, because your parents can pick your mate better than you can.
I'll tell him that.
But in America, the only place you see a 9% divorce rate is when both the man and the wife have a master's degree or greater in the same profession. So those 2 dentists that got married, they have a 91% chance. So that $1 million, if they got divorced in 10 years, the divorce would be $1 million. So they really didn't have any student loans. They just waxed out. They're not going to have a divorce. I mean,
that's
really,
right.
That's the way.
I'll tell him that.
I mean, but here's the other problem about the student loan debt. You borrowed other people's money, OPM, because you knew working at McDonald's for 20 years to save up to go to Houston Dental School in cash is a dumb idea. If you can borrow other people's money and then get a doctor degree and then start making 50 to 100, 150 bucks an hour, that was smart. But if you go down the road of other people's money, you have to go all the way to the end of the road. You can't go $500,000 of debt and then go get a job at corporate dentistry. You have to go out and buy a dental office big enough to pay that back, and that's going to be at least a $750,000 investment. So if you borrowed $250,000 of other people's money, dude, you're going all the way to $1 million. And some of these LDS Mormon guys come out with a stay-home wife. They've already got 2 kids walking when they get out of dental school. They're going to have to buy a $1 million dental office or a 1.2, 1.3, because they got to start making bank right out of the gate. These guys are $500,000 in debt. And then if they went on to ortho school, I mean, hell, they might have 3 kids by the time they get out. So you can't use other people's money half the way. You got to go all the way. And I tell these kids, if you're that much debt, that's just no big deal. If you can just
I'm excited. He's in a great rural office, and you're definitely going to look into purchasing that when Wayne's actually working with him. And I think they'll be very successful working together and paying that back. But I think it's when you purchase the right practice. Don't you agree?
No, absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
Wayne, what's the right practice? What should these kids be looking at?
Well, here's what I wanted to talk to you about today was that the right practice is one that I tell them. I say, listen, it doesn't matter if it's 600,000 for the price of the practice, 700,000, a million. The debt doesn't matter. What matters is what you're going to cash flow. And they go, what cash flow? Because they've never, what's cash flow? And so I said, listen, you have to, after you pay the loan, after you make what money you want to make, and after you pay for the car you have or the house that you already built, and after you have to pay the bills, I want you to be able to sleep easy at night. So don't think you may not sleep easier at night if you buy a $200,000 practice because of all the debt you have. But if you could buy a $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 practice, and you are going to be able to pay that loan off, pay yourself, pay your bills, and you still have thousands of dollars left as a cushion, that's okay. So I try to tell them, don't worry about the debt, what the number is, worry about what the payments are and what payments you have, and focus on that. And they kind of understand that a little better and say, oh, geez, no. I also tell them, just because the bank will loan you the money, you're a statistic, you're a number. Like you said, it doesn't mean it's a good deal. When I first went into business and the bank was going to loan me money, you know what I said to myself? I said, oh, the bank wouldn't loan me money if it wasn't a good deal. And I tell them, the bank does not care about your deal. You have to care about your deal, and you have to do your due diligence, and you have to do everything right. And that's where I get Kay involved. And I say, if the young dentist says, I'm not sure about this practice, I said, well, then you have to bring someone in like Kay and her group and do an assessment on the practice. She will do a deeper dive than you can ever imagine, or a deeper dive than that dentist who owned it has ever done. And she will tell you where there's growth, where there's opportunities for growth. It's just, does that make sense what I'm saying? I hope it does.
It makes total sense. And, back to cash flow, one of the earliest guys who taught me that, I kid you not, was actually our current president, Donald Trump. I remember reading The Art of the Deal. He said the same. He taught me that. He said, price doesn't matter. I'll buy your house for $1 billion if the term is $1 a month for 1 billion months, because I can rent your house out for $1,000 and make $999 cash flow. I don't give a shit that there's $1 billion of debt on the sheet. I'm cash flowing $999 a month. And these dentists who have way too much overhead, way too much student loans, married to someone not working with family, and I get all that, but gosh darn it, if you got all that nut, you got to buy a cash flow that can pay for all that. And there's plenty of cash flows in real estate. We call it liquidity. Like in Phoenix, Arizona, you got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. It's liquid. You can sell it today, a week. It won't sit there for a month. But if you got a 15,000 square foot mansion, it's an illiquid asset. And there's houses up the street for me that have been vacant for literally 10 years because they're just too big. What is the liquidity sweet spot in a dental office? What's moving? Is it a $750,000 practice? And at what size? And what's illiquid? Is it over 1.5 million? Is it rural? Talk about liquidity.
Yeah, the practices between 600,000 and 850,000 are selling absolutely the quickest. There are many dentists who want to buy $1 million. I'll even say, they say to me, Wayne, if you could find me an office from 900,000 to 1.4 million, I'll buy that in a heartbeat. Every bank out there is giving approval letters up to $1 million to $1.5 million for any dentist that has good credit. The problem is there are not a lot of good offices to buy at 900,000 to 1.4 million. It just seems they're nowhere in the country there are. But then the ones that get above that 1.5 to 2 million, I don't get a lot of requests for those because that's usually a multi-doctor practice. And so a sole practitioner who's looking to buy his first practice can't buy a practice like that. He has to have a partner. Yeah. So you're right. Once it gets above 2 million, it's a little rough to purchase. And
the biggest disasters I see in these kids buying practices to the dream, what's the difference between the dreamboat and the shipwreck? The shipwreck is where this 25-year-old kid walks in this office and this guy's selling major full mouth reconstructions and, presenting, these $25,000 cases, and this guy can't sell a crown. And that's so they buy these big offices and the production drops 40-50% because they don't have the chairside manner, they can't sell. They know algebra, geometry, and trig, and they can't sell. I'm glad you said that, Howard, because you will love to hear this story. You just triggered something that I want to share.
a dentist who I started calling on my first year at Benco. He was working out of 3 operatories with 1 hygienist, and all he did was family bread and butter dentistry. No major construction, no major implants. He took his practice up to 900,000, and then he built a brand new facility with 8 chairs. He took the big jump, he took the big leap, brand new office, and he added another hygienist. He started with 6 chairs. He jumped from 900,000 in a year and a half doing bread and butter dentistry. He jumped up to 1.5 million within a year and a half. His staff has been with him since he started, so now it's going on about 12. He's only had 1 staff turnover. I'm sorry, 2, but they left because of personal, he didn't have to fire them. He pays his staff well. He does his team meetings. But again, it's possible to do bread and butter, restorative dentistry, a few crowns here and there, good hygiene. It's a great success story.
I just want to say one thing and a shout out to Benco. Jan was on my case for a lot of years. She said, Howard, we've been here 30 years. A lot of this stuff was put in '94. We just really need to redo everything. She wanted to redo the whole damn clinic. All the chairs. She wanted to gut all 8 operatories, just gut it and start new. And I just couldn't make that decision. And then Jan finally talked me in to flying to San Diego to that Benco Center out in San Diego.
Yep. Costa Mesa.
Costa Mesa. That's suburb of San Diego, right?
Yep.
And we went in there, and it was like an arena of every single thing, and it made it so easy to visualize, see, point, click. She was running around like a kid in a candy store. Well, come but just being able to see everything laid out, we did it. So we bought all the 8 chairs, all the equipment, all everything. But it was like the treatment plan presentation. It's hard to do that in a catalog.
I call them the dental Disneyland. I say to dentists, if you want to go to dental Disneyland, go there.
That was a great move. I mean, McDonald's, they have a, on their cost, they plan on redoing the guts every 7 years. Every 84 months they gut it. So they plan on that. So they know in their overhead that this is going to have to be gutted. And that's why when you walk into any McDonald's, you walk into 40,000 locations, they're all between brand new and 7 years old. You walk into some of these dental offices and you think you went back in a time machine and some guy in a Lamborghini is going to show up. And
well, I'll touch on that too. They'll always ask me, Wayne, I don't need an appraisal. I know what it's collections. It's based on my last average 3 years collections. I'll say, yeah, but what if I told you the ratio is from 40% to 80%? And what if I told you that a practice that was doing 750,000 in collections sold for more than a practice that was collecting $1 million? How could you use that ratio then? So the practice that was collecting $1 million, his payroll was out of line. He had old technology. He was collecting Medicaid. And I mean, the $1 million practice sold for $450,000. The $750,000 practice that had great employees, no staff turnover, had a great hygiene program, and on and on and on. That practice, Howard, sold for $675,000.
Which also explains the dental entrepreneurial curve. The reason the banks are writing all these loans up to $1.5 million is because, they've come on my podcast and told me, they don't even run a 0.4% failure rate. Dentistry is so non-competitive that 99.6% of the people will pay their bill off. And the ones that go bankrupt almost always have the same thing in common. They have their license taken away, and that's usually for booze, Vicodin, and
drugs.
And what'd you say?
Drugs, drug use.
I like that. You did. I said Vicodin, and you
Howard. There was just a dentist who was forging care up here in New York State. A dentist, I couldn't believe it, was forging care credit applications for like $110,000. He did it on like 40 to 50 patients. They're still uncovering, but I was like, come on. What?
And dentists get mad at me. I get a bunch of mad emails when I post a case about some dentist doing something crazy, from shooting Cecil to lying to putting hidden cameras in the staff changing room or bathroom. And I always say, dude, you have to put that out there. There's 2 million dentists on earth, and if one guy's doing it, there's probably 10 other guys doing it, and they need to know, you know, that
You're
this is
get caught.
But so when these kids are at working at corporate and they're afraid to buy a practice because it's just overwhelming and all that stuff. I mean, come on, you got a 0.4% chance of failure. So if you don't have a substance abuse problem, and you're not a criminal, you shouldn't have an issue. But number two, what you just said about the office doing 750 had his overhead in line and sold for more than the office doing $1 million. What I think is the most interesting is, you know what the sweet spot is to go bankrupt? Between 1.5 and 2 million. So that office doing 750 and their labor's out of line, they start taking Medicare and Medicaid and their labor's too high and all that stuff. And those are just a Doberman pinscher. But that by the time you get to 1.5 million to 2 million, that's when the wheels come off and you do a BK, you do a bankruptcy. I think that is so because they're not aware of their problems at $1 million.
Well, they think they'll sell themselves out, or they'll sell themselves to profitability. They think the more dentistry they sell, the more profitable and the more money they're going to make, and that's just, as you could just said, it's not the case.
So, what are other things?
I want to talk about the associates and
also one more thing, Wayne, is that the one thing that we see the most of right now is that dentists that don't want to move forward, they plant their feet and they go, oh, I don't want technology, I don't want that. Really, what I see them, and Wayne and I have come across this a lot too, is that we end up having to sell their charts because they didn't keep up with their technology. They fell behind. They didn't want to get rid of their charts. And really, when it comes time to sell their practice, and a lot of them plan on that as their retirement. Am I right, Rain? They just basically have to just sell their charts. And that's really sad.
Well, they slow down from 4 days a week to 3 days a week. And the patients don't mass exodus all at once. It's slowly. And then before you know it, 3 years later, they lost 500 to 700 patients. And they go, oh, my God, so many dentists, Howard, call me and say, Wayne, I'll say, well, what's your average last 3 years production? Well, I was doing 700,000, but then I slowed down to 3 days a week and I guess lost some patients. And now I'm around 375. And I just go, ugh. When they say, well, what's the problem? I go, it's going to be very under 500,000. Well, say under 450. It's very hard to sell your practice. It's hard. And I feel bad, but somebody should have advised them, get an associate, get help. Don't slow down the 3 days a week unless you missed 2008 and somehow you were, had everything in CDs in 2008,
Yeah. And we were talking about the shipwreck to bankrupt, where I see dentists buying too big of offices that are doing big treatment plans that they don't know how to sell it. And a lot of times they can't even clinically do it. They buy an office that's placing all on 4 and they've placed 4 implants in their life. But the really sweet spot is when you find some old geyser who referred out all of his endo, and you need the numbers of how many root canals did he send out. And if he's sending out a molar a week, that's 50,000 a year. What is he not doing? If he's not doing any of his pedo and you love pulpotomies, is he referring out all his endo and you love doing root canals? Is he referring out all his wisdom teeth? So you need to be able to go in there and absolutely do everything that doc is doing. But the real sweet spot is you can get a free practice on the side if he referred out all of his kids' pulpotomies, all of his endos, and all of his wisdom teeth, and you can do all that. But that seems to be a problem where half the graduating class, I call them pulp lovers, they just want to do pretty stuff, bonding, bleaching, veneers, sleep apnea, and Invisalign. And the other half are bloody barbarians. They love pulling teeth, root canals, they love scalpels, they love all that stuff. So if you send in a pulp lover to some practice that was an apical barbarian, it's going to be problems. They'll buy some $800,000 office and then shed that down to 500 because they're sending out all the endo, the oral surgery, everything bloody. So you got to match up. So my first question, associate, is: do you love blood and guts? Do you just like the soft, fluffy white stuff, or do you like blood? I mean, And by the way, if you're listening to this, the bloody ones make the most money.
Yeah, correct.
Well,
You know, another thing too
the
is
average
that when
dental dentist is about at what 145, and the average oral surgeon is about 350, and the average endodontist is about 350. I mean, the average endodontist and oral surgeon are making twice what the average general dentist does. I mean, I have to sell you on veneers. I don't have to sell you on you have a toothache and need a root canal, and your wisdom teeth are impacted and you're swollen up. I mean, you don't have to sell that stuff. You're a fireman putting out fires, and they just show up on your door, and you put them out, and you feel better, and you make a lot of money.
Correct. I do want to share about the associate before we get off the call, Howard, because this is the one thing Dennis will tell me. Wayne, thank you for sharing that with me. When you are thinking about hiring an associate or you are transitioning your practice, you have to make that person, equal to you. If for instance, if they're coming to be an associate, so many associates will tell me, because I'll ask them, why did it not work out there? Associateships fail, Howard, 90% of the time. I'm going to try to do my best to get that down. I tell everyone to 40% or 50%. You are doing an awesome job at sending the message on how to make associateships work. You talk about old man McGregor all the time. So when old man McGregor hires his first associate, he has to tell the staff, hey, I hired this person because they are better than me. That's I believe in them. They have to make them their equal. They on the website, they should put him above his picture, move his picture down. I just talked to an associate yesterday that in California that's buying a practice. Everything sounds great. She's been there 4 years. And I said, where's your picture on the website? Oh, he's first. I'm below him. God, after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, she should have moved up there because his goal was to sell her the practice. You have to make you have to make them your equal. You have to give them equal amount of work. You have to tell the patients the most successful associateships are when the associate just isn't hired, to do all the crap work, and you're gonna look at it as the big boss. Now, when you transition your practice to a new person, you have to say to the whole staff at that initial meeting, the first opening meeting, I'm selling this practice to this person because they are better than me, and when you have a problem, you go to them, and never in front of the staff ever denounce anything they say or never contradict. If you have a problem, do it behind closed doors. That's the biggest. The whole thing has to do with personalities and all that. So I hope that makes sense, because that's what I'm hearing works best when we talk like that.
Yeah, and I just want to say one thing, back to the picture on the website. Dude, you can't have a picture on the website. I'm telling you that 10 people go to your website before one will call. And when you have a picture, like when I'm talking to you guys, I mean, I can see your smiles. I can feel your karma. I mean, I like you guys, and that this is on a computer. This is video. The dental offices with the highest conversion rate have a YouTube video. So you see that picture of the older guy and the younger female associate. That's 10-to-1 conversion. Or if that had been a YouTube video, and he's sitting there, spilling out karma, and you want your best, you want your friends with you. You know how when you're trying to make a baby look at the camera for the picture, you need the people who make you come alive standing behind that video camera, and you need to be standing on your feet so you have more energy. You need to have a more whatever just makes you likable. Because you've got, when you walk into that operatory, you walk into that hygiene check, you walk on that video, you've only got 10 or 15 seconds before they decide if they like you or not. So likability is everything. I tell the kids out of school, they say, what should I learn? I said, the first thing you should learn is a chairside manner and be likable. I tell them to go to the comedy school. Houston has comedy schools.
Yeah.
They're 2 nights a week for a couple months. There's improv classes. I tell most dentists they could double their money if on Friday and Saturday nights they got a job as a bartender. Just learn to talk to drunk people at a bar. Because if you can be likable and communicate and talk, then you can start converting. You have a cavity in your mouth to let's getting it numbed up, drilled, filled, and billed. And that's how you attract and retain staff. That's how you attract and retain your patients. It's all the chairside manner. But I also want to say one thing about the associates when you're out there looking for a job. It is my experience that the last 30 years that when a dentist says he's going to retire in 2 to 3 years, it never works out. You just almost never wake up one day and say, you know what? I never need a paycheck ever again. Because just when he starts thinking he's going to need a paycheck, then he decides, well, my car's got 150,000 miles. I need a new car. And then the wife says, can we get new furniture? Or it's always something. Or it's a family emergency, or you got to pay for grandma's funeral or whatever. So when you're walking in there and your goal is you're going to work for this guy for 2 years and buy it, if it's not in writing for Judge Wapner, it doesn't exist. It's a fantasy in your head, no different than the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny. I mean, yes. I'll say these people, well, he was going to sell it to me in 2 years, and it's 4 years, and we haven't even arrived at a price. Haven't arrived at a price? You don't have anything in writing?
You have to put it in writing. Absolutely. And I'm looked at with blank stares, or there's silence on the phone when I tell either the associate that or the selling dentist. I say, because they'll say to me, Wayne, how can I put something in writing? I don't know if this person's going to work out. I say, easy. You make a 90-day or 120-day trial period. You put parameters in there, what you expect, what they expect. There's all sorts of ways that you could put it in writing and have it be a legal document, and that way everyone's on the same page. Yeah, you're right.
And here's the other mistake they make. They've been going to this church, this Baptist church in Texas for 30 years, so they go ask their minister who's the best lawyer, and they go give him Jerry, and now you're Jerry's first dental client. I mean, I'm telling you, when it comes to a CPA, when it comes to a lawyer, I mean, I wouldn't go to an ear, nose, and throat if I had a broken foot. Right. I mean, the law is more specialized than medicine, and there are people who only do dentistry, and they've done it for 10, 20, 30 years, and I don't care that your cousin Eddie is going to give you a deal on your legal contract. Your cousin Eddie's an idiot, and he doesn't understand dentistry, and it takes a long time to learn all the nuances of an industry. I mean, what's that book, Outliers? I mean, that Outlier book shows that most people, it takes 10,000 hours, which is 10 years, to really master anything in this sophisticated and competitive of an economy. So you don't want to be your CPA's only dental client. You don't want the guy representing you because you sit by him in church. You need to find dental specialists, and I think it's really cool that Benco is putting this as its own department. You say you got 6 business consultants and 6 clinical consultants. Tell them any of those guys want to come on the show and talk. Love to have them.
I absolutely will, but I will tell you, I think that you need to really get Chuck and Rick and Larry on next. I think if you really wanted to figure out, I mean, I don't know what it is, but they just have the secret potion to make things work, and people love working with them. So I would love to see you talk with them. Larry is such a hoot. And like I said, this last week alone, he walked into the room when we were all working together, pulled up a chair, and just sat there for 1 hour talking to our coaches about Benco. You don't find that too often. So I think, Wayne and I are really blessed to be with such a great company. I'll definitely let the coaches know, but I really hope that you tie those loose ends and get in touch with Larry and get Larry on the show.
Yeah, I love my position, Howard. Benco let me invest their dollars and their time in me asking all your peers what they wanted in a transition period, in a person. What would they need? Benco said, Wayne, we want a transition position. We don't know what we want to offer. Go out there, ask the doctors, see what they want. And my position is Benco likes doing first of its kind in the industry. My position, the way I explained it, Howard, is there's no fees, you don't have to pay me anything, there's no percentages, and doctors will go, well, why would Benco invest in your position, Wayne? Well, because we are trying to earn respect in the business. We are trying to build goodwill. We're hoping, me helping a doctor sell a practice or a young doctor buy a practice, we're hoping you're going to think of Benco Dental, and they go, okay, that makes sense. And so I love that there's no fees and I'm giving unbiased opinions and help. And like you said, I'm referring them to accountants that are specialized in dental. I'm referring them to attorneys, because this is what I'm doing every day, learning on which places they should go to and which resources they should use. I'm thrilled. I couldn't be happier.
So the founder, it's third generation. Is Benco from Benjamin Cohen or Benjamin's company? Is the CO stand for Cohen or company?
They took it from Benjamin's name, Benjamin, and his last name Cohen, and that's how they came up with Benco.
Okay, so it's from Co, not company.
Yep.
that guy was amazing. His son, second generation Larry, who's still how old's Larry now?
Oh, I don't think he'd like us saying, but
Oh, he would. He's like,
I think he's 82, I think,
and
but
that
I
guy
could be wrong.
is the most amazing man. He's so good. And Larry, and now third generation Chuck and Rick. I mean, not only they make a religion out of availability, not only will they give you the shirt off their back. I mean, they're just good people. I mean, I just love those guys. I mean, you can.
I will tell
them.
you, yep, Larry, for his age, I got a new, I don't want to say from who, but I got a great new customer for Benco about my third year in, very large customer, and in the city in Brooklyn. And the customer had a problem with the sterilizer that I sold him. Larry took care of it. 2.5 years later, I get a call from Larry yesterday. He said, Wayne, how about that customer in Brooklyn that you got? How's he doing? And he said, I'm gonna give him a call and see. And I go, Larry, you are still on top of your game at your age. Like, that's how much he cares. I mean, and he reached out to that dentist, and that dentist called me immediately and said, guess who called me today? Larry did, asking me if things are still going.
I got a call from him too. When I completed my first Ironman, I did Ironman 3 years in a row, and when I completed Ironman, he called me up and he said, if he could have picked one person on the entire planet that could have never done an Ironman, it'd been his fat, lazy buddy Howie, and he was so happy for me, but he was so unbelievable shocked. He just said, he said, what's next? Shamu's going to win a dancing contest? I love that guy. And you know what? He's also a genius. He didn't buy any of those practice management softwares. How telling is that?
Right.
I mean, Shine went out and bought Dentrix, and Patterson went out and bought EagleSoft, and that's why we have this entire consulting industries, is because the dentist has no data, he has no steering wheel, he doesn't even know if he's on the Titanic, and he doesn't even know if there's an iceberg. He's blindfolded. He's Stevie Wonder standing at the bridge of a ship with no steering wheel and can't see out. And
when you look at 3 out of 5 dentists get embezzled on, the software is such an important issue. Knowing what knowing where your numbers are, it's really there's a lot to say with that.
Yeah, and with the embezzlement, the thing going all digital, now there's 100 new ways to embezzle from your employer. Then you go back when I started, it was a pegboard system. I mean, you had physical checks. Everything was physical. And there wasn't that many ways to steal. Now there's literally 100 ways. Hell, I get embezzled from you 10 different ways just on your credit card machine. Just when you take the credit card. But hey, I think you guys are incredible that on your day off, it's Saturday, and you decided to come on the show and talk to my homies. They learned so much. I think the world of you guys. Let's do the Hollywood Squares thing. Let's get Larry, Chuck, Rick, and me, and I want to start with, I would love if he would just go back in time and start at day one and walk us over the decades of dentistry. That would be so damn fun.
I will send him a text. I will send him a text today and tell him to call you.
Yeah, we'll have him call Ryan because
I'll do that.
But I'll do it 24/7. I'll wake up in the middle of the night to it. Yeah, I mean, that's just what an amazing.
You really should come out to our the new home office. They're actually updating it because they do it every year. And I was just there last week, and I don't know when the renovation is going to be over, but they're doing a major renovation, and it's just to keep everything up to date with all the new technology.
Yep, Pittston, Pennsylvania. It's about 5 minutes from Wilkes-Barre. Yep.
So it's Pittston, Pennsylvania, and what town do you fly in for that? Philadelphia.
AVP, Avoca.
AVP Airport?
Yep, AVP. It's Wilkes-Barre Scranton International Airport. Yep.
Does Southwest go there?
Unfortunately not, Howard. But they go to Philly. You got to make some business in Philly, and then Philly, you're only about an hour
from Piston.
About an hour and 45 minutes.
You know, this is a sad state of affairs at airlines. So I got money. I can fly first class on American or United or whatever. But you know why I only want to fly Southwest?
Why?
Because they always take off and land when they say so. Every time you buy a ticket, it takes off at that time. You go to America and they go, we oversold the flight. Is there, I'll give you a $200 voucher of some retail price that nobody pays. On the planet. I fly Southwest Airlines because they're the only airline that's never crashed. No one's ever died on Southwest. U.S. Air had 8 planes fall out of the sky, and they always blame it on some whatever. It's never that their company sucks. It's always some external factor that no one's ever died on the plane, and it always takes off and lands when they say. And if you're a busy guy, you don't have time for all this United stuff where they oversell the planes, and if you don't get off the seats, they beat you and drag you off. I mean, South, and they all got a great attitude.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, so I mean, I love Southwest, okay, guys.
Well, you'll have to come out to the head office and see us because we would love that.
All right, I'll do it. Tell me when, and I'm there. Have a rocking hot Saturday and Sunday.